So the parsha opens with the pasuk Vayehi Beshalach Pharo et ha'am v'lo nacham Elokim derech eretz plishtim ki karov hu ki amar Elokim pen yinachem ha'am b'roisim l'cham v'shav Mitzrayim. The Torah recaps for us that Pharo sent out the people. Kadosh Baruch Hu took us in a particular path so we shouldn't, run back. The Medrash says that the choice of the words Vayehi is very peculiar. Because there's a Gemara, I think the Gemara is in Megillah and other places, where the Gemara says Vayehi b'mei Achashverosh. Whenever it says Vayehi, it connotes something negative. Because Vayehi is actually a condensation of Vayehi, which means woe to me, or Ve'izmir. So you had that in Vayehi b'mei Achashverosh, right? The Mefarshim explain there were issues over there, but what's the issue of Vayehi b'Shalach Pharo? What was the Vayehi? So the Medrash says, obviously, you don't have to look too deeply to figure that one out, because just a few psukim later, it says when Vayugad lemelech Mitzrayim, when it was told to Pharo that ki barach ha'am, that the people ran away, so then what does Pharo say? Ma zot asinu, ki shilachnu et Yisrael me'avdeinu. Oy, what did we do that we let them go? So obviously, see, there's the Vayehi, right? That's the Vayehi. But the Medrash brings a mashal. Medrash brings a parable to what this could be likened to. And he says, various versions in the Medrash, but it's the same idea. Where a person, he had a big block of wood. And to him it looked like a cheap, nothing piece of wood. So he sold it to someone for pennies, literally for cheap. This guy was a craftsman, and he saw that the wood was a really, really good wood. And he actually broke that wood down into little tiny pieces, and he made jewelry out of this wood. And he sold each piece of jewelry for a nice amount of money, because it was a very fine wood. And from this one piece of wood that he bought literally for pennies, he made a huge, huge profit from it. Huge profit. And then when the person found out about it, when the seller found out about it, so then he said, Vayehi, oy vey. I sold this thing. I didn't realize it was so valuable. I sold this thing for pennies, and look what it's worth today. Anyone that sold Bitcoin when it was worth like $200 or $500 is beating himself up. Although, anyone that bought when it was 50,000 is probably beating himself up as well for the opposite reason. If anyone's ever played stocks, I remember I once bought American Airlines after, when it was like still bankrupt and etc. I think it was 60 cents a share. And I sold it when it was, I think, like $1.30 or something. What's it a share today? $50, $60 a share? I think I bought 10,000 shares, right? That's 60 cents. And okay, so now I'm saying, wow, if only I would have held on to American Airlines, I would be a rich man, right? I'd be but c'est la vie, that's life, right? So you kick yourself for not realizing the potential. So obviously the simple understanding of this medrash is that, again, that Pharo, once he let them go, so now he cries, "Oy, look at them. I had all these slaves. I had free labor. And look, I let them go." The Rabbi Friend discusses this medrash, and he brought that someone asked to Shaili, was it Pharo that let them go? Pharo said, Ma zot asinu ki shilachnu et Yisrael me'avdeinu. Woe that I sent them out. But did Pharo have a choice? Pharo had been slammed 10 makot already. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took away his free choice. He had no option. It was HaKadosh Baruch Hu that set us free. Pharo thinks that he may have been the one. Vayehi b'Shalach Pharo. Pharo was bemoaning because he thought that he had a say in the matter. He had control in the matter. But we know he had no choice. It was HaKadosh Baruch Hu that forced Pharo to send them off. So why is Pharo bemoaning? I had a choice. I didn't have to sell American Airlines. So I only have myself to blame. But Pharo didn't let the Jews go on his own free will. Hashem forced him to send them out. So he brings an answer that has a total twist on this medrash. When you go back to the parable, the guy sold a big piece of wood, not realizing what its value was. Later on, he found out someone was able to make a phenomenal amount of money from it. So what does he feel bad about? He feels bad about the fact that he didn't recognize the inherent value of that block of wood. He says over here, Rabbi Fran gives another mashal. He says, imagine if you have a slave. You bought a slave. You didn't realize that he was a brilliant pianist or a brilliant musician. You didn't realize he was a brilliant violinist. You think he's just a lowly slave, so therefore you have him cooking your meals, you have him washing the floor, you have him doing the dishes. Had you realized, and you sold him for pennies to someone, this person realized he was a famous violinist, or he had the potential to be a famous violinist. And what did he do? He took him on a world tour, And he made a fortune off of this violinist by making concerts. And then what happens? The person realized the original person's turmoil is twofold. I had a goose that lays golden eggs, and I didn't realize it. But also, what else is he bemoaning the fact? He's saying, I had a world-class violinist, and I made him do dishes. That's what I reduced him to. I reduced him to someone who's the sponge and washes the floor. Had I realized who he was, I would have actually used him for bigger projects. I would have also utilized his capabilities. Pharo also, what was Pharo bemoaning when he was saying, Vayehi, Ve is mir? So the Das Zakenim says that what happened? Pharo thought that these were all a bunch of lowly slaves. When he goes out to the desert and he sees them with their degalim and he sees them in their glory and he sees that they went out chamushim, that they were also warriors, they were capable, he said to himself, what, these are the guys that I made them lay bricks? That's what I reduced them to. So he realized also, it's a twofold turmoil, that he didn't realize he had such a gold mine. He had such a valuable people. So he was also berating himself for having given them such menial tasks, menial jobs. And the lesson that you learn from here is that every Jew is a diamond. Every Jew is this valuable piece of wood. And unfortunately, so many Jews, so many of us go through life thinking that we're nobodies, thinking that we're just a worthless block of wood. What are we already? We could do a bit of sponging, we could do some dishes, but a Jew has to realize that he has a diamond inside of him. That's the neshama. And just like Pharo cried over the fact that he didn't recognize the value of the Jewish people, if he recognized the value of the Jewish people, he would have treated them differently. He would have actually gotten more out of them, much more than he actually did. So we also have to realize that we could get much more out of ourselves as well. Sometimes we're guilty of shortchanging ourselves. And that's also a tragedy that we have to say Vayehi over. We all know the famous story of the Nitziv. The Nitziv was a real troublemaker when he was a little kid. And his parents had all but given up on him. And his father said to his mother one night, he says, listen, we can't, Naphtali, he's a handful. He's not willing to sit and learn in cheder. He gets kicked out all the time. So that's it. I'm going to apprentice him. I'll make him into a carpenter. And so then when Naphtali heard this, he says, give me one more chance. That shook him. He didn't want to leave cheder. And he buckled down and he became the phenomenal Netziv who wrote unbelievable svarim on Chumash. He wrote svarim on the Sheiltit of Rav Achai Gaon. And when he finished the Sheiltit, his magnum opus, called the Hemek Sheila. He made a big Seudah because he wanted to give thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says, because had I not caught myself and realized that I had so much more potential to do what I was doing, said I would have come up to Shamayim after 120 years as a carpenter, as a very frum, God-fearing carpenter. And I would have said to Hashem, I kept all the mitzvahs. Where's my reward? And Hashem would give him the reward. But Hashem would say, but you should know something. All the svarim that you had the potential to write, they weren't written because you shortchanged yourself when you were at the crossroads of your life. You sold yourself short. And that's why he was giving hodah, giving thanksgiving to Hashem. He said, Baruch Hashem, that he recognized his potential a moment before it was too late. And he's able to come to Shemaim with all the svarim that he merited to write. And that's the lesson over here. Pharo learned the lesson when it was too late. After the Jews were gone, he realized what potential we had and how he didn't utilize our potential. Let's not make the mistake that Pharo made. And let each and every one of us recognize our potential for greatness, to work and take the steps necessary so that at the end of 120, when we look back at our lives, we'll be able to give thanks to Hashem and say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I became what I was meant to become and I did not sell myself short.